always do a bit of a recap. We spoke in the first week that to go on pilgrimage is to travel with sacred intent. So you travel with a spiritual aspect to your traveling. That's the basis of it. And whether we travel across land, whether we travel in our daily lives, just coming here is a pilgrimage really, or whether we're within our hearts, then we're traveling with sacred intent. We also said that ultimately pilgrimage is a journey towards eternal truth. So we are looking to go towards the eternal when we're going on pilgrimage. And that the reason we start on pilgrimage, the reason we consider going, is out of a desire within ourselves, a desire to go deeper or desire for something. A desire prompts us to a holy discontent, prompts us to do that. And last week we looked at the idea that when you're on pilgrimage, you have to follow the path. And that following the path is really a thread within our lives that we follow. That lovely poem by William Stafford. There is a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change the thread. People wonder about what you're pursuing. You have to explain about the thread. But it's hard for others to see. While you hold on to it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen, people get hurt or die, and you suffer or get old. But nothing you can do to stop time's unfolding. You never let go of the thread. So that's the idea of the thread within us. And it's a golden thread that weaves through our lives because there's an alchemy aspect to it, to the process. We're taking the base metal of our lives, the ordinariness of our lives, and transforming it to gold by following the path. We make everything sacred. And every week I sort of tend to ask if someone here has been on a formal pilgrimage that hasn't spoken before. Just want to know if anyone here has done a pilgrimage that they'd just like to mention. Anyone been to anything? We've heard from various people. Oh, good, fantastic. Oh, where's the mic? Here we are. So just say what your name again, and then where have you? Yes.
Hi, my name is Alex. I've walked and biked a number of the Camino de Santiago's. And, in the beginning I was afraid to do it alone, and the uncertainty and the anxiety about stepping into the unknown. And it was one of the most transformative, all of them were extremely transformative. And, I'm on pilgrimage as often as I can in my daily life, so here I am.
That's lovely to hear you say that, because that's what we're talking about here, being on pilgrimage in our daily life. And when you went on the Camino, is there anything you can put your finger on where the transformation happened? What happened for you?
There was, so in the beginning, as I mentioned, there was the uncertainty, right? I was in northern Spain. I had never been there before. It was a new environment, and there was this. There wasn't a singular moment, but there was sort of an increasing number of moments where I slept, and I actually did this during COVID. So a lot of the albergues were closed, or you couldn't reserve them. So it was like you don't know where you're going to sleep. It might be on a beach, it might be in a church, it might be in the grass, it might be in a bed. You just don't know. So there was this increasing acceptance, and also not just like this joyful acceptance of the unknown. I don't know where I'm going to sleep. I don't know where I'm going to meet. I don't even know how I'm going to feel in 5 steps. I could feel lonely. I could feel great. And that process gave me something beautiful that I'm trying to keep alive as often as I can.
That's so helpful. That really is. And we're going in that direction, this thing about the unknown and about the joy that comes from that. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Thank you so much. It really gives us an insight. It's always useful to hear when people have done these physical pilgrimages. So So thank you so much for that. That's lovely. And so this week, I want to develop the idea of following the path that we've been on this idea of following the path. You know, we have a thread that we follow. And we bring ourselves, as I said last week, into the still point in our lives. We bring ourselves into that still point in our lives, you know, still point in the turning world. And that is where the thread manifests. And by following that thread, by staying in that still point, we find the path. And, you know, how do we know that we found the path? Because we experience a special peace, a peace that comes to us no matter how hard our circumstances are. When we arrive at the still point, suddenly there is a different peace. And we just know that we're there with that peace. And it's referred to in the Bible as the peace that passes all understanding. We don't know why that peace is there, but we just know that we're in the right place. We could be living with a severe health diagnosis or a very difficult situation. And by arriving at that still point, we know we're on the path. We feel that peace that passes all understanding. And that still point is the gateway to the path towards the eternal. We arrive at that still point. Actually, that still point is actually the eternal. However, our minds can't readily accept that. You know, we always think it's somewhere else, but that is the eternal. You know, the Bible, however, says that knowing the eternal is too wonderful for us to know. So we accept the peace and we look for the path. But as a gateway, what it opens up is it opens us up to the present moment. That's what happens when we arrive at that peace. And I've used this before with that wonderful little poem by Thich Nhat Hanh, who says, your true home is the present moment. To live in the present moment is the miracle. The miracle is not to walk on water. The miracle is to walk on the green earth in the present moment, in pilgrimage. To appreciate the peace and beauty that are available now. Peace is all around us in the world and in nature and within us. It is in our bodies and our spirits. Once we learn to touch this peace, we will be healed and transformed. It's not a matter of faith. It is a matter of practice. We need only to find ways to bring our body and mind back to the present moment so we can touch what is refreshing, healing, and wondrous. So the gateway of that still point, the peace that passes understanding, once we reach it on pilgrimage, not only reveals the path, but also brings us into the present moment. It gives us, funnily enough, an experience of arrival. Even if that arrival is not the end point of our pilgrimage, but we have arrived on the path. And there's an experience of arrival. It's an amazing thing. I always say that the journey is really everything. And even in our lives, you know, to arrive on the path is a moment of arrival. We are literally at home on the path. We might not have the familiar surroundings, our 60-inch TV or our phone or whatever it is, our props that keep us happy, but we are at home on our journey. By opening ourselves to the present moment, we open to the riches of the universe. We are fully conscious of all that the universe has to offer. We become one with the nature of all things. We become one with the ground of all being. To inhabit this present moment is to live in it with all the pain as well as the pleasure. To not look for escape from that suffering, to not look for a way out, it is to give up to what is. To find our true home, we have to give up the attachment we have to our ideas about what our home might be, what it should be, and live in the home that we've been given. And the home that we've all been given to live in is the present moment. That is to truly live in the present moment as your home. And why would we want to do that? Because the act of being present is in fact the act of cooperating with the universe. That's how you cooperate with the universe, by being present. We can't understand the universe. All we can do is offer ourselves to the creative power that's within us. It's not within our gift to understand the universe, but it is in our gift to offer ourselves to the creative power that's within the universe. And that will be the next aspect of the guidance that we can open ourselves to on the path. We have that thread, but we also have the vast context that contains the thread. The thread that in our lives is contained by the meta-weave of the universe. Millions and millions of threads all around, and ours is one of them. And when we link up to the meta-weave that is the universe, then we connect our thread with the thread of the universe. It is an act of will to stay in the present moment. It is an act of will. It is by practice, as it said, that we stay in the present moment. And the act of will is the act of letting go. It is the non-practice that the Buddha talks about. It is the resisting the temptation to leave. It is letting go of our attachment to what might be and embracing what is. Like, the desire to get up and go from here. The desire to have a cup of coffee. The desire to think about lunch. The desire not to be present here. The distractions that we use in everyday life to prop us up. But on pilgrimage, on the journey with sacred intent, we deliberately let go of these props. All we have need of is the present moment, truly. And our next step in our journey on whatever pilgrimage we're going on is to inhabit that space of the present moment. But more importantly, to be inhabited by the present moment. That is the next step, to be inhabited. We're all good about, all right, I'm in the present moment, but to be inhabited by the present moment is the next step. We open ourselves to the present moment and allow our very being to be subsumed by the present moment. So that all we are, everything within us too, becomes the present moment. All we are, all that is within us becomes the present moment. Our breath, our heartbeat, our consciousness, the cells in our body, the blood in our veins, they all become that present moment. And we move from being separate to being a part of that whole that we aspire to. That's what mysticism is. Evelyn Underhill had a great definition of mysticism. She said that mysticism is the art of union with reality. I love the way she calls it an art. It's the art, mysticism is the art of union with reality. The mystic is a person who has attained that union to a greater or lesser degree, or who aims at and believes in such an attainment. The word yoga means union. And it is our union with the present moment. Rather than us just looking at the present moment, we allow ourselves to become the present moment. And that becoming one with the present moment is the mystical stance that we need to guide us on our path to the eternal. Now, in the book Spirit, Body, Soul, Cyprian Consiglia, who's coming in May, he quotes the Upanishads, that Hindu scripture. And this has some of the feeling, this quote, of what it means to be inhabited by the present moment. This is the quote. The self is not known through discourse, splitting hairs, learning, however great. The self comes to those whom the self loves and takes their bodies as its own. The self comes to those who the self loves and takes their bodies as its own. Bankers, charlatans, weaklings, according to the Upanishads, cannot attain the self. Sorry about these bankers, charlatans and weaklings. The self is found by the pure, daring, cautious. They who have found the self seek no more. The riddle is solved. Desire is gone, and they are at peace. Having approached from everywhere that which is everywhere, whole they pass into whole. When ascetics have mastered theory and practice, they forge the body, they remember spirit, and they attain immortality. As rivers lose name and shape in the sea, the wise lose name and shape in God. Glittering beyond all distance, they have found spirit, and they are spirit. So it's really this idea of being subsumed by the present moment rather than witnessing the present moment. In that state, they're fully entering into the present moment. The self comes to those the self loves and takes their bodies as its own. Now, this is not some obscure state that only those who've meditated for 40 days and 40 nights can enter into. It's the state that's available to us at all times and in all places. It is completely available to us. On pilgrimage, we embark on a journey with sacred intent. We decide we are willing to do whatever is necessary. We find the thread to our journey by seeking the peace that passes all understanding within our practice. And then we enter into the present moment to arrive at our true home, the vehicle that will convey us on our way. And it is no more than being present. It's no more than that, being present to all that's within us and all that's without us. Being conscious of our breath, of the colours of the sunlight and the light in this chapel, the hum of the speakers, or in my case, the hum of my tinnitus, the sound of my voice, the smell of this place, the atmosphere that's around us. All of this is us being in the present moment. And if we can restfully enough stay in it, it will take us where we need to go. But you do need the path first, because without the peace that passes all understanding, without that peace, you cannot rest enough to be contained and subsumed into your true home. The true home that will transport us on our way. The self comes to those whom the self loves and takes their bodies as its own. When we find that true home in the present moment, we are allowing the universe, we are allowing the great self, the ground of all being, to make its home in our hearts. Jesus always said the kingdom of heaven is within us. And by giving the kingdom of heaven a home in our hearts, we enable ourselves to conform to the purposes of the great self. We enable ourselves to become a part of that. That ground of all being is the kingdom of heaven. As rivers lose name and shape in the sea, the wise lose name and shape in God, glittering beyond all distance. They who have found the Spirit are Spirit. That subsuming into the Spirit enables us to walk in right relationship with the universe, to walk the path as the universe made conscious of itself. We walk the path as the universe. And you know, that gateway to the kingdom of heaven, you know, it appears in the Lord's Prayer. If you look at the Lord's Prayer, you can see it is inviting. The first part of the Lord's Prayer is an invitation to the kingdom of heaven to live within our hearts. Great Spirit of all. You know, Father of us, our Father, you know, the great Spirit of all. You know, the acknowledgement, the one who is in the heavens. You know, hallowed be your name. May I fully open myself to you. May your kingdom come into me. May your kingdom come into me. And then this is the key line. May your will be done as in heaven, so on earth. What that means is, may your will be done not only in the heavens, but also may I become part of the heavens and do your will in that. May I be subsumed into the heavens. And give us this day our bread from above that gives us our whole life meaning. Show us how to be the way. Show us the way. It's the prayer to be taken and subsumed into the kingdom of heaven so that we can be guided on our way and that we may represent the purposes of the kingdom of God. And in looking for the way, in finding it in the present moment, we become the way, both for ourselves and for those around us. We become a touchstone for the way because we are expressing that. And as we travel in this way, we ourselves become deeper and deeper involved with the eternal, and so become more and more open to the eternal showing up in our pilgrimage. Cyprian Consiglio, he quotes Bede. And Bede says, the Venerable Bede, English mystic, says, the great sage is always urging that one should arrive at a state where the life and body perform as mere instruments of the divine. We're trying to arrive at a state where our life and our body become instruments of the divine. Then there'll be an ease and a grace about our presence and actions in the world, and we come to work as forces of nature without fresh toil or reaction. We just become that divine nature. And I've used this quote many times before, but Thomas Merton, who James Finney was the pupil of, he expresses it beautifully. He says, God utters me like a word containing a partial thought of himself. A word will never be able to comprehend the voice that utters it. But if I'm true to the concept that God utters in me, if I'm true to the thought of him that I am meant to embody, I shall be full of his actuality and find him everywhere in myself and find myself nowhere. I shall be lost in him. That is, I shall find myself. I shall be saved. The idea is to be open to the present moment, and in so doing, allow ourselves to be true to the idea of the divine that each of us was meant to embody. We decide to embark on pilgrimage, we find the path, and then we open ourselves to the present moment. And in doing so, we and the path become one. We embody the divine as we travel towards the divine. Because pilgrimage is, of course, a journey with sacred intent towards the eternal. Thank you.
So, the peace that passes all understanding, the peace that transcends all understanding. This is how we ended the service last week when I completely fell apart. But it's this illogical peace, this bubbling effervescence, like a hope that you can't make sense of. Being in the present moment, as Nicholas was saying, to live in it with all the pain and pleasure, to not escape from that suffering, to not look for a way out, to give up to what is. Nicholas saying being present, being an act of cooperation with the divine. That's interesting, cooperation, that word struck me. And being at home on the path. There's one person in my life that I've come across who embodies all of this that Nicholas has been talking about more than anybody else. And I think it's interesting for all of us to consider who resides in us, like what presences live inside you. People who maybe died thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago, decades ago, weeks ago. Like, who lives inside you? Like, I think it's really worth cultivating those presences. And this person, Etty Hillesum, is one for me. She died in 1943 when she was 28 in Auschwitz. And I'm sure a lot of you know about her. She wrote these 4 years worth of diaries. Now, this to me is just the most amazing pilgrimage that she went on from the age of 28, or 24 to 28, towards her death in Auschwitz. She, to me, embodies everything that Nicholas has just been talking about. And she just completely belongs in this conversation. So I just want to quote a little bit from her. Just hear these words as an example of just a normal person. She was 28, full of ambition for her life. She was an aspiring journalist. She fancied herself as a writer. Her diaries are just touchingly honest. And she has this amazing, she refuses to hate. She just cannot hate the people that are killing and creating this awfulness around. She knows she's going to die in Auschwitz, and she says this: living and dying, sorrow and joy, the blisters on my feet and the jasmine behind the house, the persecution, the unspeakable horrors. It is all as one in me, and I accept it all as one mighty whole, and begin to grasp it better, if only for myself, without being able to explain to anyone else how it all hangs together. I wish I could live for a long time, so that one day I may know how to explain it. And if I am not granted that wish, well, then somebody else will perhaps do it. Carry on from where my life has been cut short. And that is why I must try to live a good and faithful life to my last breath, so that those who come after me do not have to start all over again and not face the same difficulties. Isn't that doing something for future generations? And then a bit later, this is probably 9 months before she died. The jasmine behind my house has been completely ruined by the rains and storms of the last few days. Its white blossoms are floating about in muddy black pools on the low garage roof. But somewhere inside me, the jasmine continues to blossom undisturbed, just as profusely and delicately as it ever did. And it spreads its scent around the house in which you dwell, O God. You can see, I look after you. I bring you not only my tears and my forebodings on this stormy, grey Sunday morning, I even bring you scented jasmine. And I shall bring you all the flowers I shall meet on my way. And truly, there are many of those. I shall try to make you at home always. Even if I should be locked up in a narrow cell and a cloud should drift past my small barred window, then I shall bring you that cloud, O God, while there is still the strength in me to do so. I cannot promise you anything for tomorrow, but my intentions are good, you can see. So this is her diary. This is her, as she puts it, her uninterrupted dialogue with God. This is her pilgrimage. She embraces, she accepts her circumstances, the horror of Auschwitz. She leans into the present moment. She's sustained, as James Finley was saying earlier, she's sustained right up into and in and through her death. It must have been awful, and yet she was sustained, and her diaries, were found soon after she died. It's just a massive inspiration to us that we can be met in our circumstances exactly as they are. It's not about the quality of our life. It's about being met in our life.